Hello and welcome to Mia and Me. My goal of doing this show is to inform, entertain, and possibly even persuade. I'll do this by interviewing interesting people on important topics ranging from national, international politics, economics, to culture in our society. Speaking of important people, my first guest is Honorable Branko Terzic. Let me tell you a little bit about Branko. Branko is a family friend with a long resume in both government and private sector. His government service at the state level includes serving as commissioner on the State of Wisconsin Public Service Commission and the first chairman of the State of Wisconsin Racing Board. You think this is mouthful? Imagine actually serving in all those positions. But wait, we haven't reached his federal accomplishments. His government service at the federal level includes two appointments you do by President George H.W. Bush with Senate confirmation to be commissioner on the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. In the private sector, he's been CEO of a New York Stock Exchange listed company, a global managing director at the Deloitte, and serving as a managing director at the Berkeley Research Group, LLC in famous Washington, D.C. Welcome to Branko. So what I was thinking to discuss today is polls and polling. And I know you have some experience in that.
Yes, we did quite a bit of polling, both at Yankee Energy System, where I was the CEO, and also later at Deloitte, particularly during the period when the United States in the beginning of this century was introducing competition in electricity at retail. A lot of people were scratching their heads wondering, what is competition? Am I for it? Am I against it? So we had that. Also earlier in my career, I served on the board of directors of one of the largest national polling firms as they were developing a new technology called automatic predictive dialing. We'll talk about that in a few seconds, but that's really where you get your poll over the telephone and the mechanized way that that was done.
So today the news reports that Biden's polling at 52% and Trump in 42%, which obviously is an increase for Biden. How significant is this poll with respect to the November presidential election?
Well, a poll is pretty much like taking your temperature. We'll take your temperature today. It'll tell you what your temperature is today, whether you have a fever or not. We can look at yesterday's temperature and you can tell whether your temperature went up or down, but it's not a predictor. Taking your temperature today doesn't tell you what it's going to be in the first Tuesday of November, and neither does taking a poll today tell you how people will vote in the election in November. So
what are some of the historic and current problems with polling?
Well, once again, the problems have always been, how do you do the poll? Do you do it by having individual pollsters go on the city streets and randomly pick people? Do you do it by mail and mail letters to people, which was done in the 1930s? Do you use the telephone? Well, in thinking, how representative are the 10% that are answering to those that aren't? The other question is, even if those are answering, are they giving you their true opinion, or are they giving you what you want to hear? Does anybody really want to say that they don't like some particular racial group, or they don't like some particular candidate because of some racial, gender, or other characteristics? So there is a concern that some people tell you what they think you want to hear. They don't tell you what they really think. And of course, in political polling with respect to elections, it's very easy to get somebody to tell you what they think in the moment. It's very hard for somebody to commit to what they're going to do a month or 2 months from now. Yeah.
And in spite of all the problems, people still commission polls and the news reports on the results. Is there a public policy problem with that state of affairs?
I don't think so. And I for this reason, we now have because of the low number of people you have to contact, we now have multiple polls. We have university polls, we have commercial polls, the newspapers are doing polling. We have private polls that are only reporting to their clients, whether they're clients. We have nonprofit organizations such as the Pew Trust and others that are very famous for the polling that they do in scientific and public policy issues. And so there are very valid reasons to do polls, very valid reasons to use the information that comes out of polls. In the narrow question of presidential political, we now have multiple polls that are publicly announced, and of course each of the candidates has their own polls which they're doing. The names of those polls are the benchmarking poll, which is the one you start out with. Where does your candidate stand? And then you've got a brush fire poll that goes on where you're only looking at your likely voters. And then you've got tracking polls where you try and ask the same questions in the same consistent way to maybe track and see how opinion changes. And so the polls are valid. Once again, I would remind those of us who are in the general public and are reading and looking at these polls to make sure we understand they're not a forecast. They're a momentary report. If you're interested in polls, make sure you look at you Google a bunch of the polls and then reach your own decision for whatever reason you're looking. I would hope that you don't vote because of polls. That is one of the effects we worry about. There's a particular name for that, and the bandwagon effect. I hope you don't vote for a candidate just to get on the bandwagon. On the other hand, I also hope you don't vote for a candidate because you think they're an underdog and that candidate has to have sympathy. I would hope you'd vote for a candidate that stands for something you believe in or has said something that you find attractive. But I certainly wouldn't recommend anybody do their voting on the basis of polls. And I wouldn't recommend that people get discouraged vis-a-vis if they see a poll that where their candidate or the people they are intended to vote for aren't doing well, to not bother voting. That late swing effect is there. And there are a number of countries that have banned polls from some time around the election, a day, 2, 3 days before the election, in order to take away that pressure of either the underdog or the bandwagon effect.
If you do get the phone call, don't hang up, answer the polls questions, just so we have a better pulse on each other, how we can be in support of one another.
Thank you very much, Mia. Hope to see you again. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Have a lovely day.